This is Marketing Heroes Unfiltered, the journey to CMO, the podcast where we interview high-achieving B2B marketers to know their stories, struggles, and insights in this fast-paced and competitive industry. Hosted by Leslie Carruthers and Danny Muscaplat, let's meet today's hero. Mike Vannoy, CMO at Asure, is a digital-first sales and marketing executive. The creative side of marketing satisfies his artistic itch, but mostly he's a pragmatic business person and effective sales leader. He believes sales and marketing sit at the intersection of a compelling brand story, a tech stack that allows you to measure every step of the buyer's journey, and a passionate sales team that follows a repeatable process. This is a podcast about heroes, which is why you're here, Mike. Thank you for showing up.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I don't think I'm a hero, but I'm privileged to be here.
In the world of B2B marketing, we're allowed to have our heroes. Yeah. So tell us, how do you start your day?
I'll say I generally try to reserve I go to bed early. So I'm generally up 4:30, 5 o'clock, and that first, call it 2 hours. I spend mostly just organizing my day, organizing my week. If I have some individual contributor kind of stuff that I got to get done, I'll focus on the big blocks there. From 8 a.m. till mid-afternoon, I'm pretty much back to back all day, 30 to 60 minute slots, working lunch. There's not much time to breathe. So kind of a recap end of the day, if I'm going to be working on, the things that I'm the individual contributor. If I'm writing, I'm editing, I'm producing something, I'm analyzing something, I'll say I bookend the day. I know the question is, how do I begin it? But it's probably my only quiet, private time, super early in the morning before the sun comes up. The day is everyone else's during the day. And by mid-late afternoon, it's back to the heads down individual contributor stuff.
Mm-hmm. So as we speak to you today, you're in the CMO seat, but you didn't start there. Could you share your origin story with us?
My origin story. I started in sales. You know what? I remember in my mid-20s carrying a card in my wallet I laminated and had my top 5 goals on it. One was to be a head of marketing for a Fortune 500. And I very literally thought when I was in my mid-20s that the fastest way to get there is through sales. There's no better way to learn a company's products, the competitors, your culture, your market, what works, what doesn't work. You touch everything. And so I'd say I was fairly deliberate from early on. And I was always a successful salesperson and successful, rose quickly in sales leadership ranks. I'd say largely because I did good marketing for myself or for my teams. At the end of the day, it's about the words you say and how you communicate with people, right? And whether that's in a PowerPoint or a video or a phone conversation or a letter or an email or standing at a whiteboard, it's about that message. And so my success in sales, I think, kind of underpinned my trajectory to marketing. When I left corporate America, I grew up in an entrepreneurial home. My business was a topic of at the dinner table. Money was not a bad word, and I always kind of thought suckers worked for other people, and I was going to start my own thing someday. I ran my own agency, had a 12-year run. The first 6 years were amazing and exhilarating. The second 6 years were probably equally exhilarating, not quite as amazing, and find myself back in corporate America in where I would say the thing I love about working for a brand versus running my own agency, I do love being an inch wide and a mile deep and just going really deep to solve the problems.
You no longer think that suckers work for other people?
There's a little bit of part of me that still does, but not having to worry about where payroll's coming from the night before, and having a good paycheck and stock options doesn't suck either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hunting for your food is not the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about that transition. I have a number of peers who've run businesses and then gone client side or back and forth, and I think it's important and valuable to be able to do both and not have shame or stigma or whatever around it. Because, yeah, they pay you 2 weeks whether you sell anything or not. It's amazing.
Yeah. I would say there's nothing like the freedom of being self-employed. I absolutely loved every minute of that. The reality is, I've had 3 jobs in 25 years, and whatever I'm doing at the time, I'm kind of all in on. And as long as I'm passionate about that, then I'm happy where I'm at. I might be super stressed out and completely maxed out and can't imagine doing anything else, but I don't know. I kind of feel like that's the way to do life. I'm not a big believer in work-life balance, is in X number of hours at home versus work. I think we live in a modern integrated world. There's no such thing as one or the other. It's always both at all times, and better to be all in and maxed out than some balanced myth, at least in my mind.
For sure. Can you share with us some in the world of big, hairy problem that you've dealt with lately that you can share how what you figured out or how you solved for, or that would help other marketers facing the same issue?
You know what? I feel like in some ways the problems don't change. I think in marketing, in sales and marketing, what hasn't changed is knowing who your prospect is, knowing their high probability pain points, messaging to those pain points. The mediums have perhaps changed. I remember the days when it was, you got to have a mobile strategy. Well, mobile is just one of the ways you talk to people. And I remember it was like, which screen is your strategy? Well, it's all screens, right? So the platforms we talk through maybe have changed a bit, but I think maybe I'm dealing with this right now. I feel like the biggest challenge we'll always face is data. Is getting what constitutes good data today doesn't mean good data tomorrow. In data atrophies, and as you add new product lines, as you go to market in new ways, I'm always going to need more. I'm going to need my data cut this way. I'm going to need it cut that way, and it's got to feed into this system. But now I need to marry it up with that system. So I would say adapting to the ever-changing platforms, creating content suited for those platforms. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's straightforward. And so it's a challenge, but it's a challenge of just kind of muscle. You got to step up into it and just simply do it. I think the challenge of data always presents new challenges. It's when the tree falls in the woods and there's nobody around, does anybody hear it? It's like you can craft the perfect message and have the most beautiful creative, but if it doesn't hit that cohort that you're aiming at because you don't have the data to create that cohort, then it's meaningless.
It's been an interesting evolution of personalization became like the biggest trend in the world in marketing, and I don't think that anybody ever quite mastered it before we quickly pivoted now to AI. And so the data is just, in my experience, is jumbled mess. And so I love that you're talking about data, but have you seen a similar trajectory where we want just core foundational customer data, but then we want to use it to personalize, and now we want to use it to drive AI, et cetera? Are you seeing similar trends?
I think where it gets harder for me, at least when it comes to data, is when you're more thinly slicing your target audience into unique cohorts, where perhaps in the past it was, if you're a SaaS company and you got a single product and you can essentially market to say all my prospects this way and all my customers that way, that's 2 cohorts. Everything's pretty simple. But let's say you want to market to your existing customers, but maybe existing customers who are only licensed to do this in these states. And now all of a sudden, I'm not tracking that. Do they do it in my CRM or maybe native in the product? So how am I going to capture that? And then maybe these states have a different way of tracking whether it's there's a mandate or there's not a mandate. Now I'm triangulating that data against third-party databases, and how am I bouncing against a DUNS number because I can't use emails because I don't have contact data. I'm bouncing against account data. It just starts to get really, really complex really fast. It's not hard to kind of max out your productivity if you treat everybody as one cohort, right? So I got my daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it is, email strategy, ad strategy for prospects, for customers. But if I want to slice my customers up by geo, by industry, by in the example that I'm using, we're in the payroll HR industry. So, for example, some states mandate that small businesses have 401ks, some don't. Now I got to bounce my list against those mandated states. There's publicly available information if you have provide 401k for your employees, you have to file a form called the 5500. I can get that from publicly available sites, but now I'm bouncing against states that are mandated and states that companies that have already filed the 5500. That means they have 401k. Blah 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 blah. Now I'm going outside. It's not native to my CRM. It's not native to my product. I'm bouncing CRM data, production data against third-party data to try to then pull back into marketing automation and run a meaningful campaign. But my marketing, if I treat all those people as though they have the same mandate or don't have the same mandate, I'm not going to get the productivity that I need. So I need to be able to message to those unique cohorts.
Anything to say about using AI to make that happen?
I don't know if I have anything good to say about AI on the data side.
Yeah.
Certainly you can. There are lots of ways you can use AI nefariously to put together very blacklistable lists. Lots of sites that use AI in bots to go scrape and put together email lists. They're going to be filled with honeypot, gotchas and just get you in big trouble. To me, I think AI has been super helpful to my team in two ways. One is clearly content creation, right? I mean, I won't get into too specifics, but I'd say we went from being prolific, maybe a strong word, but very, very strong content producers, long form video, short form video, long form written, ebooks, benchmark reports. I'd say we were very, very active, and since using AI, we have probably 5x'd our content output. And so that extra content is not content for content's sake. It very much enriches all of your social and all of your ads, right? Because now it allows me to have calls to action in those other platforms that I'm just pulling people into rich content that helps them do their job and be better at what they do and more informed rather than buy from me, right? Mm-hmm. So overwhelmingly, I'd say the biggest impact is just velocity to content production. I do think there's another way that's really helped my team, especially the younger people on the team just coming into the industry. It's phenomenal for teaching people about messaging, positioning, pitting competitors, analysis, personas, and just triangulating your view around your buyer, around your competitors. And we all know the names of the tools. It's all the standard ones, but it's especially when you get really, really good at prompts. One of the things we do as a marketing team, we curate our own spreadsheet of nothing but prompts to get better at writing the prompts to get the information we need, and then using the plugins in GPT to point to what we believe are authoritative sources rather than relying on just the public web that could give you back answers that sound authoritative but might actually end up embarrassing you because the data can be pretty bad. It's, as we know, the internet's filled with good stuff. It's also filled with crap, and GPT doesn't always know the difference.
Yeah. Great. Do you care to mention any of the tools that are favorites of your team?
Well, I'd say probably it's ChatGPT and Synthesia are probably our two favorites. ChatGPT, obviously, certainly on content creation, but increasingly with plugins. Try to remember the name. Is it Data Analyzer? I can't remember the name of it.
Analyzer and Optimizer, yeah.
To be able to, pop in a spreadsheet and help to analyze big buckets of data, increasingly on the strategy and analysis side. Synthesia, I think, I use it a lot in presentations when I talk about AI. I think it's still, and this is going to sound like I'm talking on both sides of my mouth. On one hand, it's a little cheesy still. Like I'm not going to fool you like, oh, I thought that was actually you talking, Mike. I mean, it's obviously an avatar talking. We've actually used it a fair amount for just pure voice in motion graphics stuff. You can go to ChatGPT and produce a script, copy paste the script into Synthesia and output a voice. And now you have a narrated 30-second, 2-minute, whatever it is, the artifact that you're building. And forget the video part of it. I do use the video part of it in talks to just kind of dream what is possible. Because I think in about 5 minutes from now, it's going to be very realistic, and you're not going to have to wait for the wait 7 minutes to generate button, right? It's just going to happen in real time. And so in the same way, I talk into my phone, into Siri, and it's, over a 5G connection. So I'm using a high-speed connection. I'm using a mobile device. It's using AI to kind of predict my next words and all that kind of stuff. It behaves in real time. The real-time Jetsons video talking to an avatar isn't quite there yet, but that's just right around the corner. And it's clear that you can point these LLMs to authoritative sources. You marry up an LLM with a Synthesia type AI, and I think it's lights out for content at scale at that point.
LLM, large language model. And it's actually advanced data analysis now. They renamed it inside ChatGPT. So correction there. Myself. Yeah. Great. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I'm curious about your thoughts there because I saw you're on the board of Brus.ai also. Yeah. Bruce, thank you.
Bruce.ai,
yeah, that looks pretty interesting. Okay.
Yes. So super cool. We're partnered with OpenAI. Mm-hmm. And unlike, I think there are thousands, maybe it's tens of thousands of tech firms have spun up and say, they're finding ways to squeeze the letters AI into their talk tracks, into their products.
And then plot their path to selling.
Yeah. And I think there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, if you go, I'm looking at my other monitor here. We use ClickUp for project management and resource management in the marketing team. I can go to ClickUp and I can say, hey, develop a project plan to go do X, Y, Z. Well, it's just sitting on top of an LLM. I assume it's OpenAI, but maybe not. But it's sitting on top of an LLM that it's spitting something back. And so basically, most of these products, it's just a thin layer. It's a UI of prompt management, right? And digesting the answers that come back. What we're doing is more on the analysis side. So we're within just a couple clicks, truly seconds, we're ingesting all of your CRM data, all your win-loss, all your comments, and all your emails in conjunction with all those opportunities. So we can instantly know what are the words that correlate to wins and losses. And so therefore we can instantly scorecard your opportunities. And whether it's a daily email or you look at the app, you're going to see as a sales manager, you can't sit down on every single call of your reps, right? But now the AI is kind of like watching and listening to every single call. I think in some ways this starts to fulfill the promise that maybe somebody like a Gong made years ago. I feel like the taking of the recordings of calls is what started out to be, I think, perceived as, boy, this will be great for sales reps to know what words to say, not to say, has probably resulted in better marketing departments and better product marketing for knowing how to position products. Certainly some use for sales, but not super actionable for sales managers. And so what we're doing here, we're literally saying, hey, this deal is committed to close, but there's no agreed upon date in the email thread you have with your prospect. So it's not just the sales rep in their debrief, the sales rep in their notes, because now you're just taking the sales rep's word for it, and nothing against sales reps, but they don't always know what's going on in their accounts. If they forecast a deal to close on the 31st, do they even think that the 31st is a Sunday? Are you picking up a check on a Sunday? Well, the AI can see all that stuff, right? So the AI is by account giving a sales manager and or a rep actionable advice. Hey, this one scored higher probability to win. Here's what you need to do. These three you've got forecasted to close. Here's the problems in those three. So I'm going to say, I'm a biased participant here, but I'd say game changing, because we're not using AI to just simply spit out, the generative part here and generate text like a marketing guy would for content. We're really using it for the analysis side and then scoring opportunities so that companies can better focus on winnable deals.
Definitely does sound game changing.
Thanks for sharing a bit about that. Yeah, I want it. I'm covet it. It looks really cool. I was checking it out before.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Rasmus is the founder CEO. I might screw this up. So Bruce, I think, stands for, it is a Swedish word, means noise. And so one of our core beliefs here is that CRM data is really just a bunch of noise. It's generally leadership putting a gun to sales reps' head. The old, if it's not in Salesforce, it doesn't exist. Kind of a bunch of bullshit, because just because you put it in Salesforce doesn't mean it's even true, right? Our understanding of what truth isn't that. What really matters is what is the client saying to us, and so that's where the voice kind of tools are super compelling, like a Gong, or some of their competitors. But the email interaction, if I asked you for a meeting and you said yes and agreed to it, okay, that's a great sign. If I asked for a meeting and you didn't agree to it, that's a sign, right? If I never asked for a date, right? It's really what are the words that are coming back from the client or the prospect that are most important. And so
great.
Rasmus, I want to say, as a youngster, I'm going to say in high school, won Sweden's math competition. So super smart guy, serial entrepreneur, technologist. And he really is the brains behind this thing. And I'd say learned his lessons around the needs and I'd say weaknesses of entrepreneurs and startups trying to build a go-to-market sales motion, hiring sales reps, when you find out sales reps don't always know what they're talking about when you're debriefing deals, and you're a hand-to-mouth company trying to focus on what are the winnable opportunities and how can I influence those. And so I'd say I'm probably butchering his origin story, but that's pretty close to it.
Yeah. No, that's great. I love the idea. I mean, really the big opportunity with AI is, I'm stealing this from Paul Reitzer, when subject matter experts and, verticals or horizontals get a hold of it and see use case opportunities and develop them. Stuff like this. It's really cool.
Yeah, it sure is.
Great.
I'm trying to remember, you guys may have seen it. I think I can't remember the name of the firm. I bit on an ad and talked to a rep. It's the real-time AI voice, right? And so I think it was Air.ai, if I remember correctly, where it's not video, it's voice. And it had a few cringy moments, but you could see this AI was literally holding an actual conversation with a prospect, and it worked. It actually got them to come in. The person bit on the call to action in about a 2-minute conversation, and I don't think that person knew they were talking to an AI. When you start to think about when that, maybe we're doing a call like we're using Riverside or somebody's using Zoom or Teams or whatever, I don't think this has to go to the Jetsons Synthesia video. It will eventually get there, but I just envision how do you scale sales and marketing in you're talking about mass personalization. That's probably how it goes there, right? When the AI can have unique one-on-one conversations with each customer and each prospect, it's sitting on top of the LLM, is still sitting on the same data source, but now I could have truly unique conversations with every single customer every single prospect, but it's still grounded in that same single source of truth. I can't even help but wonder, we all voluntarily, we don't necessarily want to, but we voluntarily navigate phone trees, press 1 for this, press 2 for that, right? Will we voluntarily work with an AI that is that's essentially a robot, right? I almost think the game is not going to be about how do we get the voice tech and the video tech so good you can't tell the difference, that we're fooling you. That's cool. There's something really intriguing about that. But perhaps the most impactful thing is, what if the voice on the phone says, "Hi, this is Mike with Asure. I'm a robot, but the person my call is," and you just accept the fact, and you almost like the fact that I just admitted to you that I'm a robot, and I'm actually super polite. I'm super knowledgeable. I don't cut you off. I have excellent listening skills. You probably aren't going to care that I'm a robot, right? So maybe the end game isn't great video, great voice rendering. Maybe it's okay that it sounds like it's a robot, but it's just helpful. And as long as people find it helpful, maybe that may in fact be the path to true mass personalization.
Decreasing friction and doing it in an honest way.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So this might switch topics and it might keep us right where we are, but Mike, what keeps you up at night?
Feeding sales teams. I mean, I'm a marketing I'm a marketing guy with sales DNA. I'm a believer in brand, for sure. The better branding you have, the more effective your demand gen, the more effective your lead gen is. But at the end of the day, I live in a B2B world where we feed sales reps. And so I'd say, and I'm not trying to like make it sound trite, I literally worry about how many leads are we feeding? Are they kind of quality conversations? I want a world where sales reps, when you have to hire sales reps that have to hunt and kill their own, you're going to get one kind of sales rep. The very, very best sales reps on the planet are going to work for places that they don't have to hunt, that they're going to work on closing deals that are handed to them. And so I want to create a company that we can attract the very, very best. And that means I have to feed them. So I love art. I love video. I love all the fancy, cool stuff about marketing. At the end of the day, what I really care about is delivering high quality leads to sales teams to create a sales culture, a sales environment that outsiders are envious of. And it makes your recruiting better. And when you can recruit better, you get even better people and more better people, and all ships rise with that tide.
It's a great answer. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that is fantastic. I'm really curious about how you manage, up, sideways, down. You're responsible for all the marketing and the SDR teams. You're responsible for the content marketing, leveraging, well, I don't know if you're responsible for the content marketing, but you're pretty involved there. That's a pretty diverse group of folks. And you're thinking about, you're an HR company at Asure, so I get that you're thinking about hiring and retention and getting the best talent. But that's having been a VP sales, a sales manager, and now CMO, having run your own agency. That's a lot of diverse groups of folks to work with and experience. Yeah. What have you learned? How do you make it all work?
I think it helps to just try to stay grounded in data, probably in a really stupid tactical lead gen kind of a way. I don't mean data that I'm going to be marketing to in all the cohorts we were talking earlier. If everyone understands your funnel, right? And so, we have 5 different sales teams that we support, 5 different go-to-market motions. Each of them have their own unique funnels. But if you understand my average, but we got to generate X dollars in revenue, and that's simple math. It's average deal size and win rates, right? Move upstream from there. It's how many new opportunities must be started and how many leads do I need to generate that turn into those opportunities, and understand my conversion rates. You move upstream from the MQLs. Now you start getting a little bit more nebulous into more marketing speak, like engagement and impressions and other stuff. But if you ground everybody in the math, I feel like that's how you center somebody who is maybe a content creator and a creative, because they have to understand that it's not just for something that looks beautiful in and of itself and might win some magazine, and you get to wear the black turtleneck in the front of and take your picture in front of the exposed brick wall. It's not about the art unless it actually produces results, right? And for the marketing ops, super tactical folks, they see it borne out every day that you can't have bad creative, bad messaging and deliver results. So they see the connectivity to the art of content and ads in messaging. The folks on the creative side also see literally ad by ad, creative by creative, what produces results and what doesn't. So whether it's a trade show, whether it's traditional marketing events like a sales kickoff event or an awards banquet, literally taking it, doing the math. How do you calculate ROI in these things, and start with the end in mind and work backwards? I think that's how you keep everybody on the same page. It's not purely mission, vision, values, which is maybe more the point on the horizon that you tell people you're aiming at. I think those are important, but on the day-to-day, how do you manage to keep content people on the same page as marketing ops people, the same as SDRs, same as marketing program managers? It's what is the math of my business?
Yeah. So do you have specific KPIs for your content teams? Is it engagement? Is it traffic? Do they have a QL number? How do you connect those two?
So we stop the commitments. So we assign quota to marketing. We'll have an overlap. So obviously sales has to generate opportunities, SQL, sales qualified leads. Marketing has to generate MQLs, but also we assign marketing with SQL and MQL quotas. So they know, so it's not about the number of pieces of content, it's about the number of MQLs they generate with that content.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Yeah, it's interesting that the number of companies I've worked at where it's the opposite of what you're saying. It's create something pretty, create something nice, put it into market. Marketing has to figure out how to get the numbers. And that creates a huge disconnect. So it's interesting to hear you say, like, it's got to be connected. It's got to all be data driven. It can't look good for the sake of looking good. So just wanted to probe a little deeper on that.
I will say, I feel like our demand gen, lead gen world of marketing, with all the privacy that you don't have access to the third party data like you used to. So if you're competing in an established market with big players, there's nothing wrong with SEO. SEO can be great if you happen to have a successful SEO strategy. But if you're like an upstart company and you're competing against billion-dollar players, your chance of getting on page one for any meaningful keyword is like next to nil, right? And maybe you can get some long tail keywords. I'm not saying you shouldn't do SEO, you should. But what used to be more of an SEO email list, good messaging, good content, and I'll send it to my audience and hopefully they find me, I think it really is switched to a social media game. And you can get good insights in, from whether it's actual targeted lists or lookalikes in some of the telemetry available to see who's looking at your stuff. But the reality is it requires more of a leap of faith today than it did probably 10 years ago. And your inability to track people. If you think about all the content, if you follow somebody like a Gary Vee, right? Putting just out massive amount of content on all platforms, it really does take a little bit of a leap of faith that you're not going to have traceability of every single piece of content. Oh, I did this, and then this one that it didn't work, and that one generated this. There's a cumulative effect to all of that. So I'm not suggesting that your content teams should try to trace every single piece of content to an ROI stat and into a KPI, because I think it's unrealistic. But you should have an aggregate strategy saying, okay, if I'm blogging X times a week, X number of articles, or I'm doing this much on social, these are how many posts, how many videos, and what's my cost to produce that. And then generally speaking, what comes out of that bucket, versus, okay, I'm going to try to expand. I'm going to go bigger on this platform. I'm going to create more pieces of that type of content. You should know the cost of what it's going to take to produce there, at least the man hours it's going to be required to pull that off, and have an expectation. And you should be able to see the ticks up or the ticks down and what enters the funnel as a result, even if you don't have direct line traceability. So it does get a bit fuzzier the further up the funnel you go, but there's still no reason why you can't measure, at least in a B2B world. I still am a believer you tie everything back to an MQL.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So, Mike, as a man with something to say, is there a burning topic you have that you'd like to say anything about here today?
I'm super interested in experimenting with different platforms to see how AI is going to change the game. I think we're going to enter a world here where it's not the avatars of ourselves and how do we perfect the video and the voice reproduction. I do think that's coming, but it's just the same way we engage with a phone tree. We might not even like it, but there's not enough operators to handle all the calls at call centers. So we as consumers adapt, and we use these phone trees, and we appreciate a really good phone tree versus a really bad one, right? We know what a good experience looks like and feels like versus a bad one. If I called one this morning, I won't say why, but it was a horrific experience where I kept on being in this endless loop, and it was terrible. If I call American Airlines, I know that all I have to do is hit 0, and I'm at the rewards desk like that. And if they are too busy, I get myself in line and they call me back at the time that they promised. So there's good experiences and bad experiences. And that's not a human. I'm dealing with it's not AI, but it's technology based. I do think that salespeople are about to have their cheese moved. If you remember that book, that we're not going to replace sales reps, but I think the machines are going to play a much, much bigger role in interfacing consumers, prospects, customers alike, at helping them get the data and the information that they want easier, faster, better. And more of the decision-making process will move offline. I believe that in the B2B space, consumers love the internet age because they no longer have to talk to sales reps. I grew up in an era where when I prospected on the phone, people actually answered and set appointments to meet with me, not because I was great, but because, it was the early mid 90s. The internet wasn't even a thing. And if they wanted to know what was going on in the industry and learn the best practices, they had to talk to people like me. And right or wrong, prospects don't think they have to do that anymore. So they think they can go to the internet and then go to competitors' websites and learn what they need to learn, even if they're wrong. But because they think that, they intentionally avoid sales reps. And if we use AI to do this mass personalization, an LLM to sit on a single source of truth, all your data, all your best practices, all your industry research, all your product capabilities, your analysis of you versus your competitors. If AIs, then whether it's voice, whether it's video, whatever that generative piece looks like, I think this mass personalization will improve the experience for consumers, and we will shift even more of the buying journey to a digital process, which means then even more than ever, your sales reps are the closers at the end of that process. So I'd say that's burning issue number one that I think a lot about. Number two, what I think a lot about is, I'd say it's to my industry. There's a talk that I do that I call it the tectonic shifts in human capital management. And if you think about what's kind of shaped the world we live in today, it's easy to flip on the news and you think, we think about unemployment rates. We think about people working virtual. We think about pay equity, all these things. I think it's easy to blame on pandemics, on wars, on presidential politics. And obviously those things have an impact in our lives, but I think it buries the real story of changing demographics. And I'm not talking about men versus women. I'm not talking about ethnicities in where you're born. Just the sheer number of human beings. The fact is, there's more baby boomers hit retirement age every day than people are being born for the last 50 years. And so, where we've been used to this population pyramid, lots of young people, and then the tragedy of life, people exit, and then there's a fewer old people at the top. That's for all of mankind, the population's been this population pyramid. And we're not that anymore because the boomers were out here, they're born, and as they age and come up here, birth rates are about half what they were in the 50s. And so there's not as many replacement workers down here. It's no longer a pyramid, it's a column. And in 2020, a lot of people don't realize we hit the tipping point in the United States where there were more people over working age, over 65, than there were under 18. First time in US history. It's always been the opposite. More young people than your workers, than your old people. And so the US population continues to grow, but the available workforce has hit a tipping point. And this labor shortage that we face today, it is not going away. And it is not because of labor participation. It is not because of pandemics and wars and presidential politics, all the things that capture our attention. It is based on demographics. And this changing supply and demand of labor is going to it already is fundamentally changing in my industry in HR. There's just been an explosion of HR laws for the past, call it 80, 90 years. You'd have really big federal laws, Fair Labor Standards Act, Civil Rights Act, Equal Pay Act, Americans with Disabilities Act, OSHA, FMLA, Healthcare, Affordable Care Act, big pieces of legislation. The Fair Labor Standards Act, forever there's always been one minimum wage. About 10 years ago, a couple states decided to say, we're going to have our own minimum wage on top of that. Today, there's 155 jurisdictions of minimum wage. And whether it's leave that's paid or unpaid, minimum wages, overtime, this rule if I'm this gender, this rule if I'm in that industry, this rule if I'm below or above this number of employees, these laws just keep layering on top of each other and getting more and more complex. When you combine that with this now labor shortage, which I believe is a permanent fixture in our lives for the next 50 years based on demographics, I think that's what's really, people vote with their feet and they choose the employer that they want to work for. And so I kind of come full circle back into AI. I think there are going to be tons and tons and tons of people displaced by AI. I also think the timing couldn't be better because we have to have it. If GDP continues to do this, that's essentially the shape of the employment, the available workforce grew at the same rate. Well, if GDP is going to do this and available workforce is all of a sudden hit a tipping point, it's going to do this, something's got to fill that gap, and it's productivity. And I think that's AI. Now, there will be casualties, the 9.1 million over-the-road truckers. As soon as we hit a tipping point that our society accepts autonomous 80,000-pound trucks delivering goods and services that, don't have to stop at truck stops, don't get tired, they don't get in fights with spouses, they show up on time, right? As soon as we hit a tipping point, we're going all in, and there's 9.1 million people out of work. So there's going to be big disruption we're going to have to deal with. And we'll figure that kind of stuff out as a society. But I really think this changing demographics, the available workforce, the massive amount of complexity that is entering managing human beings because people demand more from their employers than ever before, that gap will be filled with AI. And some of the ideas that we've talked about here today, I think, are scary. They're uncertain, but they are what's going to fill the gap.
Got it.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. Thanks.
Now I'm going to be up tonight, not sleeping, thinking about this. Mike, what advice do you have for the next generation of marketers?
I think the next generation of marketers should go into sales or customer service. I think the skills of marketing are very teachable. to learn how to use marketing automation, learn how to use analytics. These are all acquirable skills. Nobody is going to teach you how to do marketing better than your customers. In going out and getting your ass kicked by customers telling you no for this great thing that you thought was such a brilliant idea in this beautiful PowerPoint or this beautiful ad slick that you created that just falls flat on its face. You have to talk to customers. You have to talk to prospects, and you have to talk to competitors. And so if you're in customer support and you're in customer sales, that's what you do all day, every day. There is no better place to learn how to be a great marketer.
Love it.
That's great.
We just had Bernie Borges on as a guest, and he started in sales, and very similar conversation. Yeah, and recommendations.
So now we didn't preload these questions to you. They're very easy questions. Just answer as quickly as you can. We've got about 7 of them.
Okay.
And it's just a fun way to end the hour. All right, Leslie, you start.
All right, Mike, if your career is a movie, who plays you?
Oh my gosh, I'm probably terrible at it. I don't even know any names of famous people. I'm not cool enough. I have no answer for this one.
No?
Okay. It doesn't have to be an actor, a rock star, a politician. Do you want to just play yourself? That'd be awesome.
I'll play myself, I guess. I don't. Not a good
I was
one.
going to say George Clooney if he's not freshly shaven.
You know what? I will take George Clooney all day long.
All right. What's your favorite KPI?
Favorite KPI is SQLs. I manage a lot to MQLs, but at the end of the day, it's the sales qualified leads.
First job, worst job?
I grew up on a farm, so first job was as a youngster, following my dad around, being my dad's shadow, helping him out and putting in long hours as a kid, but thought that was life. I didn't know it was a job. Worst job was my first ever sales job. It was worst and best. Boss was a bit of a tyrant. We had before the word stand up was a thing. We had a meeting every single morning. There was supposed to be a 15-minute meeting, which was really a 45-minute ass kicking. And so that's why it was the worst, because it was just personally kind of brutal every single day. But my God, I learned so much from the man.
That's great. What's your favorite productivity hack?
Productivity hack is calendar blocking. If you don't own your calendar, somebody else will.
Okay. Amen. What's the last book you read?
So last book I read was Persuasion. Book before that was Fourth Turning.
Got it.
What are they about? Give us a one-liner on each.
Fourth Turning talks about, like I talked earlier about, like changing demographics and changing of the economy. The Fourth Turning is really about there are larger forces at play, these tectonic shifts, if you will, where there are just cycles. There's a business cycle, there are cultural cycles, and kind of trying to explain maybe the division we feel when you if you turn on the news channel today, that this is actually quite predictable, and this is just part of a normal cycle that we're going through, and we should probably not worry so much. And it lays out past cycles and predicts future ones. Persuasion, really interesting. I highly recommend to anybody in marketing. It's the cues that set up our decision making, right? So when presented an ad, if people are approached by a person walking in the street and say, "Can I do this or can I do that?" How that primes their mind and primes their psychology to material differences in the actual ad performance in and of itself. One of the early stories, a salesperson, super high performing salesperson, old school insurance in the home, gets in the home, intentionally always left something in the car so he could say, "Hey, do you mind if I just let myself out and go to the car and grab this piece of paper? I'll let myself back in." And he did this on purpose because what he learned was if he could get them to trust him to walk freely through the home and then back in, they were going to be more likely to trust him an hour later when he asked for the signature. And so it's all these, it sounds manipulative. And the book actually talks a lot about not using this to be manipulative, but it's all these psychological primers that prepare people to respond in the way we want to our calls to action.
Nice.
That's interesting.
And it looks like the fourth turning is a series. I also see the fourth turning is here.
It is. It is.
Yeah. Cool.
Who's the most fascinating contact on your phone?
I'll say the most fascinating phone numbers are my kids.
Okay. Got it. If you could be famous for one thing, what would it be?
Oh, if I could be famous for one thing, it would be helping people to see the world through a different lens than the short-term news cycle that we live in. Whether it's the algorithm fed thing that's sitting in your back pocket that's the positive feedback loop that tells you what you want to hear without knowing it, the news cycle, what we hear in public and in school, to really be able to step back and see the world through a different perspective, which means my real desire is to actually see those things myself and be informed but wise and help people see that context. Example, to see the world through perhaps the tectonic plate of 50 years worth of demographics, not presidential politics.
Fantastic.
Describe yourself in 5 words.
Passionate, driven, kind, loving. What's number 5? Creative.
Great.
Great list.
Awesome. All right. One last one.
Okay.
What's the best compliment you've ever gotten?
Best compliment I ever had was from a sales manager who, great guy. Love this guy. Make the room laugh. He started to work for me. I ended up putting him on a performance plan. He for sure hated my guts for a period of time. And a year later told me that I was the best boss that he ever had. He said that before working for me, the rumors were that working for Mike was going to be death by spreadsheet. But once he understood the actual KPIs and what we're measuring, and once you had a foundation of measurement, then you could focus on the art. Then he was one of the best managers I ever had, and we got along famously. And so this whole helping people to see the world through a different lens and how it really works, and changing their framework. I got my fix, and then he got his fix too.
Nice. Actually, I do have one more. Apologies. Yeah, that was fantastic. We haven't asked this one for the last few, Danny. Is there something, Mike, that you've dreamed of doing for a long time but haven't? And why not? Why haven't you done it?
I grew up on a farm, and I assumed when I was a young boy that I would be a farmer when I grew up. I went to college and discovered technology and technology sales. That became a passion, and followed a career in technology-based marketing. They say you can take the boy off the farm, you can't take the farm out of the boy. I still definitely, on a very regular basis, imagine my big old ranch with animals and tractors and boots and jeans and flannel shirts and no other humans but my wife and kids. And what keeps me from doing it is my day job, which I'm also passionate and all in on. So, maybe someday. We do have like 15 chickens in the backyard and a couple dogs and a couple cats and a bunch of kids. So I'd say we're near suburbia version of that, but not the real thing. Perhaps one day.
Great.
Thanks, Mike.
This was so fun.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, enjoyed it, guys. Thank you.
Very educational.
Pleasure.
I learned a lot on this one.
I do think a lot about these mega trends impacting our world, and I think how that really shapes in this marriage with AI. It's I think we're in very, very unique, super cool times.
Agreed.
Yeah, amen.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, thanks for staying long also.
Yes.
Yeah, no worries.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for staying tuned. If you're enjoying these conversations, we would appreciate it if you subscribed and give us a 5-star rating. It helps us increase the podcast's reach. Thank you. See you next week with more inspiring stories. This episode of Marketing Heroes is brought to you by The Search Guru, produced by Circle Audio, and podcast cover by Andra Lazord.